I don't know. I didn't check my stool, Jordan.
You
No, I didn't feel it come out of my
swallowed it.
ass.
You you swallowed as in.
Yeah, when I was eating crackers. It wasn't on purpose.
That's crazy. Why was it in your mouth?
I don't know. The crackers at the Zin.
Why was the Zin in your mouth while you were eating crackers?
I was trying to challenge myself and I failed.
What the fuck? Oh, really? All right, 1 second.
So yeah.
All right. Hey, good morning. Welcome to the Stokastic.com NFL Showdown Strategy Show. Dave Loughran and Matt Gajewski, Tampa Bay Bucs at the Falcons. Little short rest Thursday night game, divisional matchup. And we're here to break it all down for you today. As always, Matt adding his brilliant insight to all of this, seeing what we can do. Maybe take down the big one. Just looking at some of these contests today, you're still just every week getting, for some reason I thought, and maybe I'm just wrong, Matt, for some reason I thought last year for all these prime times they were doing millie makers, and now it's 500K on DraftKings. But maybe that was 2 years ago.
I remember that, demand and popularity is always bigger at the beginning of the season. I remember them going to the 500K structure, but I don't remember when it started. And if I remember correctly, they still had a couple one-off millies randomly throughout the year.
Okay.
They will sell tickets to millies and stuff, but who knows what they're going to do. Still, the prize pool is very, very good. I'm excited for it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Listen, I have zero complaints. I just, for some reason, and I could be completely mistaken here, I just don't remember. I thought it was when basketball started, they started to bring the prize pools down a little bit for NFL, but
that would make sense.
Yeah. But I don't know. Anyway, still a lot of money to be made today, and we're gonna hopefully help you guys make it, ourselves included. How you feeling, man?
I'm feeling pretty good. There's a lot. Did you know when you include college football, there is a game on for 56 straight days starting tonight?
Really?
So I've never felt better.
Okay, so I know obviously Sunday, Monday, Thursday for the NFL. I know college Saturday and Friday, and they do some Tuesdays, right? So like Tuesday and Wednesday, we're gonna have a college game every day for what, the next like 6 weeks?
Till Thanksgiving.
Really? Now, what type of college are we talking about here?
Oh, it's going to be the Florida International versus Kennesaw State kind of college football, which I love. You might like it too if you had more time. I know you're very deep in the NFL streets, but comparable to what we see in preseason.
Are what does the stadium look like there as far as like the fans? Is it
Some of these stadiums, they seat like 10,000. They're amazing, dude.
But I'm saying, like, will there be 10,000 people there, or will it just look empty?
No, there definitely won't be.
Do they just have like one aerial camera angle from up in the press box?
Some of these games have pretty bad broadcasts. Usually when you get a weekday, ESPN will be there, whoever's carrying it, and they do it a little bit more. But I mean, if you catch like a UMass game on a Saturday, your announcer's some guy they found in the park, and they're filming it on an iPhone. I mean, this is kind of what you get when you see these greasy college games. But when they're featured on weekday games, because no one's watching anything else on a Tuesday, sorry to NBA, NHL, and MLB playoffs, you're getting dwarfed by Kennesaw State, FIU. It is what it is. Then they'll do it up more.
So like would a Texas or Alabama high school game have better media coverage and like better broadcast?
Maybe if it was like the playoffs or the state championship, they would definitely have better attendance. You can't watch like a lot of high school games on television, but I'm not from Texas. Maybe in Texas they have it on like local broadcasts and stuff. In Wisconsin, I'll tell you this, they do occasionally have high school games on, local channels here. And it does look like someone's filming from an iPhone. I'm guessing in Texas, it's better than that.
I bet it is. Happy to have you guys with us. If you don't mind, take a single second, atone for your sins this morning. Sean Cunningham, I'm feeling like atoning, Laffy. See, I appreciate you, man. People just come in, they know the drill. Atone for your sins. Hit that thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment down below. We get some good comments on these early shows, and Matt and I were talking about it the other day. Really appreciate you guys supporting this, because it's crazy. Like, you always hear, oh, the DFS ecosystem is wearing down and people are going to betting. We've had more viewers than ever on this show, I think, recently, Matt, this year.
Yeah, appreciate you all being here. It means a lot. Thank you for spending a little bit of your day with us.
Yeah, Brendan Boyle, atoned and subscribed. My man. Jordan, how far off are we? Where are we at from 100K? You guys are sick of me talking about this, but we will fucking get there if it's the last thing I do. Yeah, take a gander. Take a gander, see where we're at. We got to be close, man.
I think we're under 300.
I think we might be close to under 200 here at this point. Okay, so 218. We're
going to get there by this weekend, man, with Live Before Lock.
You and I said Sunday, right? We said we'd be there by Sunday. So let's do it. If you want to help us make that push, even if you hate us and you want to subscribe and then unsubscribe, just to twist the knife, that's fine too, as long as we can show it. Anyway, let's get into this. Glad you guys could join us today. There was a question, Matt, I want to answer real quick because I think it's really important. Brendan Boyle, how do you guys decide when to go against the Sims? I got a lot of HN and Dolphins D Monday. Didn't feel great about it, but went with it. Obviously hurt, so I'm interested in your thoughts. That's the thing, though, with especially those short slates, like 2-gamers and stuff, really anything, the results don't always, and oftentimes don't reflect what the actual best lineups were. Like, you could go in and look at some of the winning lineups a lot of weeks, and I know some of you guys are going to be like, well, that's not true. They won, so it must have been a good lineup. That's not true at all. Like, a lot of people that end up winning a milli, Matt, with a single bullet, if they were to keep all of that milli in their bankroll, they might not ever be they might not ever win again sizably. So it's just, and that's not a knock on anyone. It's just the idea of, like, sometimes it doesn't mean don't make adjustments. I make ROI boosts. Matt and I have made projection adjustments at times when we have a really firm stance on something and you maybe want to get a little overweight on the field, but you want to be careful not to look, and you can speak to this, but to look too far into immediate results on a small sample based on what happened and what the Sims were saying.
You can't look too much into the small sample. You'll constantly be chasing your tail if you look back at what I should have done this particular week versus others. Denying the role luck plays in DFS is a bad idea. You just have to know there is luck to it. You have to take this with a long-term approach. Yes, we're playing a DFS game that focuses on an oblong ball with crazy penalties and stuff all over the place. Guys trip and fall on plays. Like, weird things happen in NFL games. Extra points are missed. It's in the long term where we're trying to make good decisions and put ourselves in position to succeed. Week by week in a 1-game sample, crazy things are going to happen. It's the long term you should be focused on. As far as the Sims go, first of all, like, you want to check on how you did without really focusing on the 1-week results. We have a lot of post-contest simulations you can run and look at yourself, which tries to take away some of that noise. I don't think people utilize that stuff enough. When you can, if you have the extra time, go back and look and see how you did. That's where you want to make adjustments. As far as on the individual game stuff, you and I are in the weeds more than anything else. So when you see stuff in games, you're going to have situations where maybe there's not clarity. Tonight, we're maybe going to see a lot of Sterling Shepard. That's because Trey Palmer and Jalen McMillan are out. At some point, you have to take a guess on how many routes he plays. Does Tampa Bay bring up an extra receiver? Do they go to 12 personnel? We have proxies to make these decisions. The player prop market's pretty efficient. The lines tell us a lot. Even just foundational stats like pass rates, plays per game can help you. But at the end of the day, you still need to make a choice. And maybe you're just making a slight choice. Like, Does Tampa Bay play 15%, 12 personnel, or do they play 10? That influences projections a little bit. And in the end, it might influence how much you get of a player. So I feel comfortable making some changes week by week. And that's because I'm just spending a lot of time looking at the route shares of these teams. One situation could be, perhaps a guy has a route share of 50% one week and then he jumps to 75. Well, if books and places that produce projections are basically middling that at like 65, 62%, and you believe there's a 75% in there, that's a chance for you to make a potential bump.
That's a great way to look at it. Yeah.
It's just situational. There's not a good rhyme or reason or rule of thumb. I wouldn't just be making choices based on feeling, like Bijan Robinson had a good game, so I'm going to bump him. I think there needs to be some substance behind it. But when you do have those takes and they are grounded in something, I think it's okay to do.
Absolutely. And Brandon said, what Laffy's saying is process is over results. Absolutely. But the process has to be right. And that's why if you have the sims, use the post-contest sim every single week. Because if the process looks good, then you're like, okay, I'm on the right path. And the NFL, remember, guys, it's only a few days a week. So, it's hard to win consistently. You're just looking for one. One of the adjustments, and mind you, this will segue us straight into this game, that I made last week or on Monday, and it did not end up working out for me, but I still don't think it was entirely wrong. I tried to get a little over the field on Jalen Wright because of the Jeff Wilson injury. Jeff Wilson played 2 snaps, Matt. Jalen Wright played 47% of snaps in that game. It's just Miami's offense was terrible and they didn't get there. But if you're looking at like opportunity and us saying, okay, who could get more? Because all I care about in the end is opportunity, right? All we care about is potential volume. What they do with that is far less relevant to me than did they have the chance? Like, was the opportunity there? And Jalen Wright ended up playing around 50% of snaps and had 10 touches at 1% ownership on a 2-game slate, or 10 looks. So again, those are spots that I'm willing to look at. And we have to be doing the same thing with showdowns.
You also need to be considering like what contest you're playing. If you're playing cash games, low risk stuff, small field stuff, your goalposts kind of change. For reference, like this was week 1 or 2, I played 150 and I chopped for second. Just isolating that 150 set, I lost money because of the dupes and stuff. But you don't take first in some of these contests that are 33% to first. Some of the egregious ones are like 40% to first. You could have a losing day, finish in the top 10 and really kick yourself for the results. But at the end of the day, you were still top 0.01% finish. But it just came down to variance, and in showdown, especially, quarterbacks kneel at the end of games and lose rushing yards. Those can have vast swings at the end of the day and where you finish. So sometimes it's just, and this is hard. I mean, like you got to get in your own head and tell yourself, like, I finished second and still lost money. I'm still doing something right. It's not always easy, but some of our tools will really help you with this. The post contest is great for that. And then just trying to have a long-term approach.
Absolutely. Let's get into it. Perfect way to segue into this is, well, 44-point total. Falcons are 1.5 points short home favorites on a short rest day, divisional matchup. I want to start actually with Bijan. Cam March, I said, Kirk isn't good against the blitz. Tampa sends the blitz 53%. Yeah, I saw 54, but still highest in the league. Makes Bijan Robinson a really intriguing play here because let's talk about this. Let's break this down, Matt. This is where we get into the weeds and have some fun. And we're going to do so with some grimy plays today as well. But Bijan dealing with the hammy, off the injury report, I think it'll be fine. To me, it's like, hey, you're trying to rest a guy on a week where you only have 3 days of rest, right? You only have 1 day of actual practice. And that to me, like Mike Evans was a DNP on the estimated practice report for Tuesday. What does that really tell you? It tells you that he's a veteran and they want to keep him fresh, in my opinion. But Tampa has allowed the most receiving yards, second most receiving yards to running backs and the third most targets through the first couple weeks. Bijan Robinson's a 3-down back who's good at picking up the blitz. You can also use him as that safety valve that Kirk Cousins, who is a complete statue, particularly after the Achilles injury, might need to do. And you've also, like, it's not like you're going to Pitts in those situations. Mooney's not your guy for that. So even if Bijan struggles on the ground, I think there's a lot of PPR upside in a spot like this.
I agree with you. You mentioned just the pass catching stats. Tampa Bay is also fourth worst in yards per carry allowed to opposing backs. So
They
whether
did
it's
get Vita Vea back, though. I think that that's significant.
definitely helps, definitely helps. He is also one man.
True.
And, like, does Vita Vea bring you from a bottom four unit even to average? Maybe he does. I don't think it brings you like to top 10 or anything you're scared of, but that's to say this Buccaneers defense, I think, is a little weaker than we've seen in previous renditions. And they have cracks in a lot of spots, especially to running backs through the air on the ground. The only concern I have with Bijan right now is Algier has been awesome and he's deserved more opportunity. They've spoken about him getting more opportunity, and Bijan is on the injury report. So predicting the split here is a tricky situation, and I'm not sure where I land. I don't think they're going to limit Bijan's touches at to get Algier on the field more, but it's at least a question worth asking.
Yeah, it is. And Algier's been good. There's no doubt about it. I still think that's why I keep coming back to the passing game, because I think Bijan is still going to be the guy that you're looking towards in the passing game in a spot like this. Algier has been good on the ground, absolutely. But is he somebody that you would rather have out there on third downs over Bijan? I'm not so sure of that. The problem is with Bijan's price point, you kind of need a lot from him, right? And I still, on a slate like this, I still keep coming back to the fact that the ceiling on Bijan is big, right? He got a receiving touchdown wiped off last game. We haven't seen a great game from him yet all season, right? 16 DraftKings points has been his highest performance. Yeah, I don't know. I still think that, and I'm also not worried about the injury. A full session Wednesday, full practice, no limitations on Wednesday. Like, he wasn't even limited yesterday in practice. So I think he's going to be okay. But the question is, does Tyler Algier play a more significant role? Because he played a season high 38% of snaps last week. Definitely possible. Do they just look to use these guys a lot and it doesn't matter? Tyler Algier at the flex spot is 4,800 though, Matt. He's not exactly cheap either.
They've been pricing up these backup running
I know.
backs. It kind of sucks, man. Unless you get a Jalen Wright situation, they're sort of unplayable outside of sprinklings for large field tournaments. And it's basically just a leverage point. You're not playing them because they project particularly well when you price adjust. It's been kind of frustrating. So I don't know. It's kind of like a blanket statement, but Algier's too expensive, especially when you start considering the alternatives. They also messed up Ray McCloud's price. So just like a 1-for-1 situation, you're almost never playing Algier in a low risk contest, something of small field, flat payouts, like flat out never getting to him. But if you want to play him in tournaments just as a leverage piece, I mean, sure, he's going to be on the field.
He's definitely going to be on the field.
Like, it sucks when DraftKings messes up the pricing like this and you're like, I like Algier, he might play more. Doesn't matter because he's too expensive and Ray McCloud's egregiously cheap. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's just like what you're paying for these two projections is so lopsided, it's not even a decision unless you're playing super large field stuff.
You're basically forced into making decisions you don't want to.
Unless ownership gets crazy, which it's not right now. You'll obviously monitor this through the day, but
yeah. All right, so let's take this a little bit further then, because there's a lot of spots to touch on here. The fact that Kirk, you would think that they're just going to bring the blitz against Kirk Cousins a lot here. What do you think is who do you think is the biggest beneficiary in a spot like this? I mentioned Bijan from a receiving standpoint. I did bet his over on receiving yards, laddered it up to 52 because why not have fun during the NFL season, Matt? But aside from that, yeah, Pitts has been wildly uninvolved up until this point. Aside from that 50-yard, first a touchdown in week 1, which basically on a broken play, and then a 50-yard reception against Kansas City, he's really been uninvolved, pretty non-existent.
I think it's Bijan to answer your first question.
Me too.
And I think from there, my answer would be Ray McCloud, but I don't feel fantastic about that. They've been moving him all over the place. If you just look at who they're putting in the slot and stuff, it's not been consistent. And his slot percentages have bounced all over the place. He had a season high in week 2 of 65%, a season low of 36% in week 3, and he's been in between that the other 2 times. So I kind of think this is smart, not using the same player in the slot every single week and playing matchups and utilizing players to their advantages, but it's not going to solely be him. The one thing I can say is Bijan's going to be pass blocking at times, but then he is the sort of leak out option when Kirk Cousins is under pressure. So I think he is probably the safest. I would put McCloud 2 tentatively, Drake London 3rd as the beneficiaries of really blitz heavy Bucs team. I think Drake London might play more in the slot just as that big option, get him easy layup targets. Pitts is dead to me, and I think dead to the NFL. Dude, he doesn't do anything well.
I know.
I feel vindicated too because I didn't like him coming out of college. He's a big receiver who's playing tight end, and he is so bad at blocking. He's so bad.
Right.
And this isn't just me talking, like PFF metrics, pressures allowed, pass blocking or run blocking. He is so far below average. He's a straight liability in blocking situations. So immediately you're into a problem where, all right, we want to be a power run game, or even if you just want to run power run game sets, we need to bring Charlie Woerner in. Are we going to go 12 personnel right away and use Kyle Pitts sort of as a big receiver? Maybe it hasn't worked. And the other thing is, can you use him like Isaiah Likely? Can he be like a big bodied receiver who creates mismatches? I don't know if it's the PCL injury or the repeated injuries he sustained. He flat out is running in mud right now. We got the straight Najee Harris running in jeans on Kyle Pitts. I don't know what the problem is, but this guy has gotten worse every year he's been in the NFL, objectively. Look at any sort of metrics you want, yards per route run, blocking metrics, down. This guy is not playable right now. Not just for DFS, like his snaps are declining. At some point, he's going to hit the bench.
Isn't that crazy?
It is crazy.
It's the guy that was a 1,000-yard receiver as a rookie, right? Isn't that like, it's just, and some of those statistical, accomplishments are just kind of fluff when you look at it, because now you're on a team that's actually pretty decent. The Falcons have a good defense. I said it coming into the year. I am a believer in this Falcons defense. I really am. And this is a team that can compete. They've put the weapons around Kirk Cousins, and the weak link has been Kyle Pitts. Jake DeWitt, Matt, what a fantastic monologue. Yeah, couldn't agree more. Also, the thing about Matt that you guys should know by now is when he's passionate about something, particularly passionate about the negatives towards somebody, that's where we got the AJ Dillon looks like he's running in jeans, right? This is where these come from. The passion that oozes from Matt when he is so actively rooting against somebody to be good is going to make for some really good content.
I feel bad. I don't wish him to fail. He just has. And people love to sugarcoat stuff and try to look at the positives. I mean, it's not all roses with these players. And that doesn't mean other teams couldn't find a path for Kyle Pitts to succeed. Like if he went to the Eagles, I would have a lot of faith in them. They've been an offense and just an overall organization that rehabilitates these tweener players. And he is firmly a tweener. I don't know, man. He could succeed in the right situation. I'm just not sure Atlanta is the right fit. Plus, they continually are recycling coaches and this and that. And they have way more competition on the roster compared to that first year where he had the 1,000 yards. Like Drake London's here. They add Darnell Mooney, who's more of a situational deep threat, and he does a very skilled particularly well. You'd never want him to earn like 25% of the targets, but he's there now competing. Bijan's an amazing pass catcher. There's just a lot more competition than Pitts ever had when he was the 1,000-yard receiver as a rookie.
You're right. Deeg said Pitts is going to get 2 touchdowns tonight on the first slate. Everyone seems to agree that Kyle Pitts' experiment is over. You might be right. It's the level of parity in the NFL right now is just all-time high. And Tampa is, you're right, Matt. They're allowing 5 yards per attempt. They have had some struggles on the ground for sure. I'm not denying that. but I still look at this team as a pass funnel defense in a lot of situations. But it might not be the case today. Really might not be. Like, you may just have Atlanta trying to mitigate that pressure, mitigate the blitz, and do things differently. That wouldn't shock me. At the same time, though, the crazy part about Kyle Pitts, and this is the question you have to ask yourself, is what should Kyle Pitts' price actually be at this point? Because this is a guy now who, outside of that fluky touchdown in week 1 inside the 10 against Pittsburgh, has been a complete non-contributor. You're talking about 3 for 20, 2 for 59, but Matt, again, 1 was a 50-yard reception. And then there was nothing else aside from that. And then no receptions last week. Does that mean that he's dead and it's over? No, but it certainly means that when you start digging up target shares on this team through the first 4 weeks of the season, and you're looking at Atlanta from top to bottom, and there's guys that you thought may have been entirely uninvolved, you start to realize that Kyle Pitts is not a feature option in this passing game. Just pulling up the target share right now for the Atlanta Falcons, you're at 28% for Drake London. You're at 21.5% for Darnell Mooney, 20% for Ray McCloud, 14.5% for Bijan Robinson, and 12% for Kyle Pitts. So among the guys active out there, actually getting snaps and running routes, Bijan Robinson, McCloud, Mooney, and London thus far are all ahead of Kyle Pitts. He has verifiably, objectively been the 5th option in the passing game for the Atlanta Falcons so far. And that's all there is to say about it. If you wanted to get to him on a showdown slate, I have no issues there. But Pitts should probably be a $4,000 player in the flex.
It's well said. And anyone can score touchdowns at any slate. Nick Vannett has scored a touchdown this year. Could Kyle Pitts score 2 touchdowns, be the guy that breaks the slate? Absolutely. The decisions you need to ask yourself are, is his projection, when we factor in salary, something that we can stomach at the ownership? He's still coming in with some ownership. Obviously, he's the flashy player, and I don't know if he's burned enough people yet. Also, it's a 1-game slate. He'll be played somewhat regardless. But does that fit into your lineup at the salary with the projection? Because his projection's not good. And I don't think, if you're making a range of outcomes and you're trying to either talk yourself into a player or talk yourself out of a player, his snaps and routes and stuff have been declining. If you're going to make a boost on him, mine would be towards, the downside. He's been such a liability on the field. What are the chances his snap share increases versus what are the chances they decrease? I think they're more likely to decrease, although he's probably, parked right in his role. I'm not going to adjust Pitts. I don't think. When I ran the Sims, I got 8% less than what the field is going to get just this morning. We'll see how it shakes out through the day, but I'll be underweight to Pitts right now at this ownership.
And I think whether you love it or not, there are a couple guys that you're probably going to have to get overweight on. And, I know you're not a fan of this guy coming into the year, and, the belief that the target share could be, maintained, but Ray McCloud at this point, $3,400, 20% target share through the first month of football. Here's the thing, Matt. We don't have to love the guy, but it does not appear that he's going anywhere. And over the last 3 weeks, his snap share has been 100%, 95%, and 98%. They are running 3 receivers. That is it. Nobody else. We don't necessarily know who's going to have the big game tonight. We never do. And anyone tells you they do, they're full of shit with something like this. But we know this. We know London, Mooney, and McCloud are going to play almost every single snap when it comes to these offensive drives. And remember, this is also an offensive coordinator that is coming from the Sean McVay, 3 receiver, like Zach Robinson is just running a ton of 3 receiver sets. And we know how often they do that in LA as well.
I think that's the right move. They don't have very good receivers outside of their top 2.
Agreed.
And you mentioned it. I'm no Ray McCloud fan, but the real shade I was throwing at him in week 1, or I guess this is week 2 after week 1, is that he had 7 targets and then they just spread targets. It was 3 apiece to everyone else on their roster. My argument is that McCloud should not be your target leader if you're running a competent NFL offense. And since then, they've made the adjustment. Drake London, 31 targets, 27% share. Darnell Mooney, 24 targets, 21.5% share. Ray McCloud has dipped to 19.5 on 22 targets. That's fine. If he's going to be your wide receiver 3, your third option in the pass game, maybe fourth if you want to elevate Bijan, I'm fine with that. I think that's the role he needs to play. So I actually
Matt, I'll take it a step further. How often do we see a guy in the low 3K range that has a 20% target share?
That's the biggest thing. They messed up his price.
They messed his price up. Like usually those guys down there, no joke, have an 8 to 10 to 12% target share, right? In that 3K range.
For sure.
Yeah, it's crazy. You
know,
there was
for like an option down there, he's actually pretty reliable. If you're talking to like a 5K price tag or something up there, I'd have less interest, but he plays in the slot a fair amount, roughly like 50% of the time. It ebbs and flows. His ADOT is low. He catches balls around the line of scrimmage. But with a high target share like this, you're looking at a pretty reliable projection. Upside questionable, absolutely. But this guy is pretty likely to get you between like 6 and 12 points, somewhere in that range. Most of the time, that's going to be the outcome. Like very rarely is a guy going to break the slate at this ADOT, and very rarely is he going to give you a 0. He's kind of like Atlanta's version of Wan'Dale Robinson. I won't go like to the crazy, whatever 14 target game Wan'Dale had, but he sort of plays that same underneath role.
Yeah, right. Where you can just kind of rack up the PPR points and nothing else. But yeah, a little bit deeper in the field than Wan'Dale. But Wan'Dale, I said it the other day, Wan'Dale might have 100 receptions for 400 yards this year, Matt. Like he might just average 4 yards per reception.
It's sad. I love Wan'Dale. He was like my favorite player in college when he was in college.
He's helping the Giants though. I mean, look, it's not crazy what they're doing. I don't want to get off track here, but Malik Neighbors is so good outside that you can kind of just pick up the 5, the 7, the 8 with Wan'Dale. You know, like it's the most concentrated target share in the league. You don't need Wan'Dale to do anything crazy. He's just he's reliably average, and I think that actually helps the Giants.
You make good points. He's going to need to do more if Malik Neighbors keeps getting murdered on the field.
Oh yeah. And Neighbors didn't even practice yesterday, which is no good considering they played on Thursday last week. But I digress. Bug Boy made a comment and Clayton made one, but I'm going to get to that in a second. Bug Boy said, remember the days where an $8,600 quarterback was an auto play in Showdown? Yeah, I guess you could say things have changed a little bit. It is weird though, because it's more of a passing league than it's ever been. But, you know, the thing with Kirk Cousins is just he is completely lacking in mobility. He is a statuesque quarterback. The Achilles injury did him no favors there. This offense hasn't clicked yet. He has 1-2 touchdown game. That was against Philly in week 2. And that was a crazy, you know, final 2-minute drive, 4-play drive that drove him 80 yards downfield or whatever it was for the touchdown. Aside from that, he'd been pretty unimpressive. He's been not great. And I still think, though, at 8,600 against this Bucs defense, no Antoine Winfield today. Kalijah Cansey is out as well. Like they still are missing some pieces. This could be a game where you get like an 18 from Cousins and you're perfectly okay with it. At 8,600, look, is he the best play ever at quarterback, the most underpriced quarterback play ever? No, I'm not saying that. But I'm not shying away from Kirk Cousins either. I'd argue that for this game, he's still probably a little bit underpriced.
I agree. When I ran the Sims, I actually got a ton of both these quarterbacks. It was largely in the flex, which makes a lot of sense to me considering their skill sets. They're both largely pocket passers. Baker's certainly more willing to run than Kirk. Whether he should or not is very debatable with his limited athleticism. But as far as Kirk goes, and when you talk about him in flex versus captain, if he has a big game, what are the chances one of the pass catchers can outshine him or Bijan because of his pass game involvement? What you really need from Kirk to be the optimal captain is, first of all, a great game. And then second of all, it to be spread so far across all these players that none of them ends up as the optimal captain over him, which isn't the most likely considering we just talked about how condensed the target share is up top for these teams. You basically have a tight end who's uninvolved in Atlanta and then 2 stud receivers one at least. Maybe calling Darnell a stud is a stretch too far. But Bijan's also a good pass catcher too. So just a lot of alternatives that you could use in the captain over Kirk for a player that needs a very specific run out to be the optimal captain.
I like him so much more in the flex.
I love him in the flex. He's my most owned flex player, my most positively leveraged compared to what the field is playing in the flex. I'll have a ton of Kirk.
And to your point, I'm looking at our top single game and showdown plays tool, which gives you, for those of you guys that are subs, it gives you like the top play probability. So what's the likelihood that they are the top overall play? What's the chance that they are the optimal captain, utility ownership, utility optimal, and the leverage? I'm looking at it now. Cousins is negatively leveraged at the captain spot. Neutral leverage. So no real leverage there, but then positively leveraged at utility. So, and that's with 49% flex ownership. So I definitely see that being the case there. Is there anybody else that you want to talk about for Atlanta before we move on to Tampa?
Honestly, not really. The only thing I would say, these backup tight ends, you need to think about them because they're on the field.
Charlie Woerner,
Woerner, man, you couldn't draw up a worse backup tight end for DFS. I remember when this guy came out of Georgia. First of all, he was like a third tight end there. When he got drafted, I forget who he got drafted to, but I remember Nolan Kelly DM me and he's like, "Why are they showing highlights of him blocking?" I was like, dude, he's like a sixth offensive lineman. That was strictly what he did in college. And his NFL role hasn't been vastly different. He is a blocker first and foremost, which is why he fits pretty well with an offense like Atlanta, who doesn't have their starting tight end capable of blocking. But yeah, I mean, anytime you get drafted at the tight end position and your highlights are not catching any passes, it's kind of a red flag for DFS.
Yeah, he has 124 career receiving yards in 4+ seasons.
Who drafted him? I forget.
The Niners, right?
The Niners, yeah. I remember that now.
Yeah, the Niners. Because I remember when he was on the Niners, and there were actually times where Kittle was out that Charlie Woerner was a DFS play. And I don't believe it ever worked out. So
I mean, he has 124 receiving yards.
Yeah. 124 receiving yards in 13 games. So I suppose it could be worse. Has he been? No, he hasn't been inactive that much, has he?
He's a very specific tight end. I don't think he's been active a lot. Like Ross Dwelly, who's also on this team, was active ahead of him previously in San Francisco.
Yeah, by the way, no, this is wrong. He has been active in a lot of games.
I think sometimes they only show up the games where he was actually like caught a pass or something.
Yeah, or targeted probably, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, either way, not good. I don't see it there. I think the only upside there is that he somehow catches a rogue touchdown and he has like 1 for 3 and a touchdown, but the guy has 0 career touchdowns since 2020. Like it's hard to make
his college stats for fun. He never had more than 11 catches in a single season in college. Like, I'm not kidding. He was strictly like a sixth offensive lineman.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, he wasn't drafted to be a pass catcher, right? So
he was a really late draft pick too. He wasn't a high one.
No, he was drafted in 2020.
Sixth rounder.
In the 6th round. Yeah. So that tells you all you need to know. All right, let's get to Tampa. This is an interesting spot for me. And as always, guys, if you want, Matt and I talk about these tools because we use the tools every single day, all the time. And, it's just one of those things where it's a lot easier to talk about them when you use them because this is our process. Also the process of people, we just had a guy take down 50K the other day. I've had a nice season using these sims, and so have many of our subs, whether it's the single lineup sim where you can go in and Jordan's showing the screenshots right there. Everyone's submitting to the Hall of Fame Twitter, rocking the avatar as well, which you should do. But just looking over all of this, and there's so many different options for you. And I think a lot of you guys might even have subs and don't even know all of the tools are available. So go to the Stokastic join page even if you are a sub, link in the description and in the chat, and see everything that's available, from the essentials to the light to the core to the max package. Whether you want to build lineups by hand, sim them and get instant feedback with the single lineup sim, or you want access to everything for the max, to be able to sim out 10,000 lineups yourself and make those ROI boosts. By the way, we just made some really cool adjustments to the Sims tool that Brian Berriman dropped in Discord yesterday. Some really cool improvements and enhancements. We're making them every day for you guys. We listen to your feedback and we're doing everything you can, but you can adjust exposures, exposure caps. You can now adjust, Matt, here's a cool thing. How many uniques per lineup? Did you know that? We just added that. How many uniques per lineup?
I did not know that. That is awesome.
Yep, we did that and a bunch of other stuff. But the Sims tools are the future. Whether it's the single lineup sim and you want to build them by hand and get that feedback, or use the Sims, but you're also talking the top stacks tool, ownership, player projections, player stat projections, all of our tools. If you're playing on like pick 6 for DraftKings, all of that stuff, the optimizer for that. Just from top to bottom, man, we've got you covered on everything. The lineup generator, and every package includes the premium Discord. So good as time as ever now to jump in, Mac, too, because you got that international game on Sunday morning showdown. So what? Thursday, Sunday morning, Sunday early, Sunday main afternoon, night, and Monday night. But no better time than right now on a Thursday to pick this up.
I'll tell you this personally, my own experience. It's very hard to play all of the showdowns, especially when you start adding in London games, international games. And maybe you want to play them. I personally want to play every single possible slate I can, but when you're building by hand or you're using an optimizer, whatever previous archaic method of lineups we used, it's not easy to do all this stuff and make sure you're still getting good lineups. The sim tool is going to ensure you're getting good lineups no matter what. You can still make your tweaks when you do have a personal take on a snap share or a route share, and you're never getting those bad lineups that an optimizer is going to give you. An optimizer never gave you any feedback, just gave you top projected lineup, didn't consider dupes, didn't consider ownership. This considers all that stuff, and you're not going to get the lineups that are overowned. So even just you're trying to play more stuff, showdowns, you want to add stuff, can't recommend this enough. It's really helped my process and helped me increase my volume across different slates.
Yeah, man, me too. And you're right, you can play a whole lot more, especially if you're not even fully in tune with the slate yet. Anyway, link in the description and chat. You ever have questions, hit us up in Discord. My DMs are always open on Twitter if you haven't signed up and you want to, but you know where to find us and you know where to get the best tools around. All right, let's talk Tampa here. So we had a comment from Clayton earlier. This was interesting to me. That was basically talking about the only way Pitts gets there is if they go down early and Cousins has to throw a lot. By the way, Chris Williams, thanks. Shout out to you for gifting those memberships. Here's the crazy thing about Atlanta. They have done such a good job defensively of limiting yards after the catch. I don't know what it is now, but I saw last week they were allowing 2.8 yards after the catch per reception, Matt, on the season, which is crazy. They have a good secondary, good safeties. They've allowed only 4 passing plays of 20+ yards, so nothing really downfield. This has been a good pass defense that is limited big plays, limited touchdowns. So it makes it a more intriguing spot or like a complicated spot for Tampa. Because, do they limit Mike Evans with the deep ball? Does Chris Godwin rack up a ton of receptions, but not a ton of yards? All of this stuff is important to think about. But in the same breath, how much does it really matter when it's not like we can go, oh, well, there's 10 other games to choose from. Like, this is all we have.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up good points. Tampa Bay has been limited by some other good defenses already this year. And I don't think you can really poke that many holes in Atlanta. They have faced a good slate of quarterbacks. Of course, you have Justin Fields week 1, but then did a decent job limiting Hurts, Mahomes, and Derek Carr, who'd been on an absolute heater. So it's not like you're facing Bryce Young or cupcake quarterbacks the whole way. I mean, we're facing MVPs, players that are actually in Super Bowl contention year in, year out. I buy the Atlanta defense. They made a lot of improvements this offseason too, so it's nice to see them actually have some success. But yeah, it's going to be tough, especially with Tampa Bay coming into this game a little banged up. Probably looking at Sterling Shepard as a wide receiver 3. So, I mean, when you can dedicate extra resources to Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, it's not anything that's great. They've been banged up at running back. Fully expect those guys to play through it, but not optimal. Plus, Tampa Bay, they have injuries outside of the skill position players. Luke Gedeke on the offensive line, that's not exactly the strongest unit on their team either. So losing him isn't a good sign. I don't know. If I were to bet this game, which I almost never bet NFL aside from the Super Bowl, I would take Atlanta. Maybe I will sprinkle an NFL bet.
You like Atlanta here, huh?
Kind of talking myself into it, at least. I have it. You do the betting video. I need to watch that still.
I like, I the under is where I came in on, under 44, and then a bunch of props. But I kept coming back to this defense where, like, how did Tampa light up Philly last week? Philly's not good at tackling, and Baker Mayfield gets the ball out quicker than any other quarterback in the league, right? You know, his time to throw is shorter than anyone in the league. The Philadelphia Eagles as a tackling team are terrible. The Falcons are not, they're quick to the point of attack. They have not allowed many yards after the catch. So does that, and they don't allow deep passes. Does it neutralize the passing game? I don't know. I mean, they're going to get something. They're still going to get something, but you know, we saw Denver with a kind of similar approach in week 3. They really stifled this offense for Tampa. Can Atlanta do that today? I don't know. It's a divisional spot. These teams know each other pretty well, but I think, and this might be, this could be a little controversial. Probably not though, because both of these guys have different skill sets. Yeah, it's not, I mean, not controversial at all. They're both getting a lot of ownership. But I do like Godwin a little bit more just from the PPR standpoint. If this ends up being a low scoring game, you know, a 7 for 50 game from Godwin might be enough to get you there. Whereas Mike Evans in this spot, good chance he needs to find the end zone, but they're just totally different. Mike Evans could have a 2-touchdown game. He could. And Chris Godwin could have an 8 reception game and still break one loose. Like what game was it that we were talking about where it just went completely different than anyone kind of would have imagined? Oh, you know what it was? It was Monday night, or no, sorry, Matt. It was, Monday with Kenneth Walker, where it's like, hey, Detroit over the past 1+ years allows no production to receiving running backs. They're so good at slowing the run, arguably the best run defense in the league, and Kenneth Walker just torched them. So I can look at it from one angle, but also kind of acknowledge that what happens usually doesn't happen every time, and we only have one game to work with. So yeah, clearly Chris Godwin and Mike Evans are still really good plays today because they're the feature players in this offense, and there aren't any other guy who, this is what it all boils down to for me. And then I'll end this tangent and throw it over to you. Who else are they going to today when you don't have McMillan, you don't have Palmer? Sterling Shepard's probably going to play 80% of snaps in this game.
Isn't that wild?
It's crazy. He had a really nice catch last game. I mean, he still has a pulse.
Like Sterling Shepard actually a little bit, but when you talk about the players at the top, especially when you're running a portfolio of lineups and you can't just lock Bijan Robinson, who is my favorite captain right now, I do think going to the places of the most concentration makes sense. And Drake London is one of those guys. I would probably rank him second. I think he is an easier time against this Tampa Bay defense than Godwin or Evans, but he's not far ahead of those two. Target concentration projects to be, I mean, even more concentrated without Jalen McMillan. Trey Palmer is what he is. He's kind of like a field stretcher, but him being out too, it should consolidate opportunity for Sterling Shepard. But at the end of the day, are we expecting a lot of first read stuff for Sterling Shepard? I wouldn't imagine he's a big focal point of the offense. We kind of know what he does. He's a chain moving slot who operates underneath the field. Perhaps like the most interesting conversation to have is what's the best way for Tampa Bay to allocate their snaps? Because Godwin's been playing a ton in the slot. Shepard can't really do anything outside. Do they move Godwin outside to perhaps get the best configuration? Or do they just like put Sterling Shepard on an island out there and then Atlanta doesn't even have to worry about him? I truly don't know what they do. It's at least a conversation worth having.
Yeah, it is. And the problem here is that you've got Sterling Shepard at a really, really discounted price point. a really discounted price point. And then Cameron Johnson at an equally cheap, or no, more than that, $200 price point for Cameron Johnson on a day where we don't have Trey Palmer and we don't have McMillan. They got to do something, right? Once you get past Evans and Godwin, do we just have to play both of these guys? Not in the same lineup, of course. I mean, unless you want to, but like, do we just have to be getting exposure to both of these guys? On Monday, we had no value, right? We had no value at all. And that was a 2-game slate. On this one, if you include McCloud at 3,400, Johnson at 200, he's the bare minimum. And then Shepard at 1,700. Some of the pricing just seems off compared to what we've seen throughout the showdowns this season.
I agree with you. It's very easy to jam studs because you can play 2 of these value guys and then you're automatically up to the top. Luckily, there's more than one. And when you factor in Johnson, he opens it up even more. But I still want to prioritize Godwin and Evans. I went and just double checked the slot rate. Didn't want to say it because I wasn't 100% sure I was right. Shepard was only outside, or he was only in the slot for 16.7% of snaps in week 4. So they basically had him parked on the perimeter, which is still probably what you want to do. He stinks, and you definitely don't need the defense to really focus on him at all. But I would rather have Godwin in his true position and Sterling Shepard playing out of position a little bit than the opposite. And like you said, he's so cheap. Like, does it matter that he's not targeted a lot? No. What does he really have to do for you at 1,600? Basically, if he catches 3 balls for 51 yards like he did last week, that's awesome. Great outcome.
Yeah, without even scoring. So what do you make of Cade Otton? Here's an interesting one. Through weeks 1 and 2, Cade Otton had an 8% target share. The last 2 weeks, he has a 22% target share.
We have a long sample of Cade Otton being, the 3rd or 4th option in this offense. You remove the 3rd option, so he probably jumps up to number 3 over Shepard. But to me, this is just small sample noise. Like, he is not going to be targeted at a high rate with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin in the long term. A little higher than normal because you don't have a clear wide receiver 3, perhaps. But are we really buying high? What is he, 17 targets in the last 2 weeks? Are we really buying high on that right now?
No, what I'm doing is I'm trying to just basically average out the first couple of weeks and the last couple of weeks.
I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
Plus,
like there's no, sorry, go ahead.
They had that crazy game. Like, how many pass attempts did they have in their last game? I can't remember if it was week 3 or 4 where they threw like 18 times. They just didn't get off a lot of plays. So, I mean, you get 4 targets or something in a game script like that. It looks like you have a monster target share in that game.
Yeah. Well, against Philly, they threw. No, so Otton was only targeted twice in that game against Detroit where they threw 19 times. That's the one you're talking about in week 2. But Mayfield threw 47 times against Philly in a blowout win. That's crazy.
That's how I would attack Philly.
You have to. It was just short passes, yards after the catch. Short pass, yards after the catch. Philly's so bad. So bad there. And yeah, they won 33-16. That game was never competitive. I think they were up like 24-0 at one point, and Baker threw 47 times. It's crazy.
That's insane.
But this is not that. Here's what I'm getting at. This is not that type of matchup at all. At all.
No. Secondary is good for Atlanta.
Yeah. So if you had to go in to look at this game, you already said you're kind of getting pushed towards that Atlanta -1.5. If you were the coach here, if you were at the helm in Tampa Bay, how would you run this offense today against this defense?
That's a really hard question because they've been so complete really everywhere. I still think trying to establish some sort of run is probably the best way to approach this.
That's what I think too.
Player personnel perspective, when you're throwing into AJ Terrell and I mean, they added Justin Simmons and Jesse Bates is a pretty good secondary compared to what they've had in previous years.
It's a good secondary.
I mean, you could throw into that or you could run it up front on like man, they still have good edge presence though. Like adding Judon late in the process was great for them.
Huge.
Jarrett's good, Onyemata and Harrison. I still think that's the weaker part of the defense. And plus, they don't have the best linebackers, in my opinion. Still strong, but if you made me pick a weakness, I think running into that would be what I try to do. The thing is, can Tampa Bay do it? Especially banged up on the offensive line. The running backs are somewhat banged up. Hopefully Bucky can get more opportunities. He just looks like he's running in a different gear than Rachaad White. But yeah, man, I don't know.
It's difficult. It also doesn't help that Luke Gedicke's out.
No, he's yeah, concussion.
Yeah, that doesn't help at all. I think I think you try and get Bucky Irving the ball more, and that might just be the answer here, right? Like the first 3 weeks of the season. How about this? The first 3 weeks of the season, Rachaad White had 5 red zone carries and 3 inside the 5, so 3 goal line carries. Last week, he only had 1 and none inside the 5. Bucky Irving had 5 red zone carries just last week after having only 1 the entire 3 weeks before that, and all 3 of the team's goal line carries, of which one of them he converted to a touchdown. So, like, we saw a pretty dramatic shift in usage. Well, you might look at the split there between those 2 guys and go, all right, so Bucky Irving had 10 carries for 49 yards against Philadelphia. Rachaad White finished that game with 10 for 49 as well. But inside the 20, Bucky Irving got all the work. That is interesting.
This is the perfect example of where and if this remains consistent tonight,
make adjustments.
I am going to make an adjustment on this. And you just have to use the information that's given to you. And what is that? Rachaad White has been the least efficient runner, at least bottom 3, over a long sample now. Last year and first 4 games this year, he's been dreadful.
Can you DM Ben and tell him this, please? I've been telling him this for a year and a half now.
Why do I need to tell him? Just open up like Pro Football Focus, the box score.
I've tried. People watching this show know I've tried.
There shouldn't be anything you need to tell him. All he has to do is like, okay, download a CSV, sort by whatever efficiency metric you want, blend them. Yards after contact per attempt, force missed tackles, whatever it is, he's terrible at it. I've done this. The only thing he does well is he's a pretty good pass blocker and he has good hands. So he gets you reliable yards out of the backfield.
Good pass catcher.
Which has a role, and that's why I don't think Bucky would ever completely ice Rachaad White. This is probably some form of committee, even if Bucky continues to outperform him on the ground. But could this swing, like 60-40 in favor of Bucky at some point? Absolutely. He's a pretty good pass catcher in his own right, at least in college he was. I'm not sure about some of the fine-tuned things in the NFL, like pass blocking. He may have some distance to cover to catch up to the veteran in Rachaad White there. But still, any sort of yards after contact, force missed tackles, Bucky Irving is running laps around Rachaad White, and he has earned more work. That is factored into price. He's not, $3K. We're talking a $6,400 price tag on DraftKings. His projections come up to, we're looking at around 11 for Rachaad to 8.7 for Bucky, but that's still factoring in Rachaad White being slightly ahead. If this truly does flip at some point to Bucky being slightly ahead of Rachaad, this is a situation where you could consider giving him an ROI boost. Maybe you could bump him slightly in projection at the expense of Rachaad White. You need to make this decision yourself. I plan on being a little bit aggressive with Bucky in the situation, given the long sample we have of Rachaad White being average, to put it kindly.
Good in the passing game. Well below, no, you can put it kindly, but he's well below averaged as an actual rusher.
Yeah, people are saying I'm being mean, so I gotta be nice to these players and not call them failures all the time.
And it's funny because Rachaad White and Bucky Irving have very similar touchdown odds on this slate as well. So we'll see. But
what are you gonna do? What is your plan?
I like Bucky Irving more than I like Rachaad White today.
So you're going to do something similar, maybe a slight projection or ROI boost?
I will. Yeah.
I think this is the perfect situation to explain process there.
Me too. I was really kind of blown away by that really huge shift in red zone opportunities. Like, what's up?
Chris Williams said contests aren't won by niceness.
That's a good call. It's a good call. No, I don't you think that's wild to see such a dramatic shift though in red zone usage and goal line usage in 1 week, just 1 week, totally. And it wasn't like they split, they flipped. They completely flipped. And Rachaad White just was not used in the red zone. And he went from playing 70+% of snaps in all 3 of the first 3 weeks, then 58 and 42 split last week, the fewest amount of snaps he's played, the most that Bucky Irving has played. And then also, if you just start to look at, if you start looking at routes run and just overall targets, yes, obviously you're talking about Rachaad White having the advantage there. Sorry if I'm slowing my speech. I'm pulling things up as I do this, so I'm trying to talk and look things up on the fly. But Bucky Irving's only ran 40 routes to Rachaad White's 89. That's clearly where the advantage comes into play for Rachaad White. But how long do we see that continue? Is it going to continue forever? Last week, Matt, despite that huge disparity, and by the way, guys, we just updated ownership and everything and projection. So Palmer and McMillan are out now. Last week, Rachaad White, 24 routes run, 18 for Bucky Irving. That gap sure seems to be narrowing, if you ask me.
Yeah, man, I always defer, especially with rookies, back to their college play. Like, is this something that Bucky did well in college? Can he catch the ball? Because Rachaad is fine in that area. And these are high leverage, important situations to NFL coaches. Like, pass blocking matters. Maybe it doesn't matter for DFS and we don't care about it as much, but it certainly matters when your quarterback's going to get killed and you need to make decisions. He was a pretty good pass blocker in college, and he was a player that had very good efficiency metrics when catching the ball. Obviously, you got to step up to the NFL level of play, but it's not like we're dealing with a Zamir White in the pass game. This is a player that did play well in college. He actually profiles pretty well from, a pass catching perspective. He's a light, agile back with good hands. So I don't think just because Rachaad has been serviceable in this area, that means he's always completely iced Bucky Irving. Again, I don't think this ever becomes like a 90-10 split in favor of Irving, but I think he's not iced out of the pass game. Irving could definitely catch some passes.
He could. And he did last week. He had one less target than White. Psychology of us with a comment. I love going to Arby's for the same team to get different, especially in a situation where you're facing a good secondary. That's got to be voice to text, right? I'm going to RBs, Matt. I'm going to RBs.
I love Arby's.
Oh, yeah. The double beef and cheddar.
Little roast beef.
Oh, double roast beef and cheddar is so good.
He's definitely saying this must be a talk to text. He's definitely saying 2 RBs from the same team. I mean, I was jamming Gibbs and Montgomery in that first game.
Yeah, you did.
Or I guess the second game on the 2-gamer.
Just not enough Walker, right?
Yeah, and to the Walker thing, like he's rolling over defenders, not getting tackled. That's the kind of stuff where don't beat yourself up if you didn't take first in a contest with Kenneth Walker's rolling over defenders and then having enormous runs when he should have been tackled. Just like crazy stuff happens in football. On this particular slate, which running back situation would you be more likely to play both of them from?
Oh, I knew you were going to ask me that. It's so difficult.
It is hard.
But okay.
Because collectively, they're kind of the same price. You got to pay a ton for Bijan, a little for Algier, or both in that like 6K range for Tampa Bay.
I think Bijan Algier would actually be the spot for me.
I agree.
And another reason for that is that I still think Tampa, while they want to establish the run, I still think Atlanta is going to run the ball more, right? I still think Atlanta wants to run the ball more than Tampa. And with that in mind, I would go with Bijan and Algier. Atlanta has pass play percentage, what, 58% this year. Tampa's at 61%. We've seen some weird games where Tampa's been, able to run the football more and just weird turnovers that put the games in weird spots. But I actually think for me, it would be Bijan and Algier in this spot.
I agree with you. They're favored. They're at home. Matchup. They both can catch passes too. That's another avenue for success with a blitz-heavy Tampa Bay team. I'm with you on that. I don't know if I'll do it a ton, but I am more likely to do it with Tampa Bay.
Same, or with Atlanta, you mean?
Yeah, sorry, Atlanta.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to it. I'm not opposed to the Bucky and Rashad White spot either, but you know why actually? So it's a combined salary, but at the same time, it feels easier for me to say, like, okay, instead of Bucky and White both, you're hoping for kind of equal production out of them. Like, I don't know, you get 12 each or something, and maybe that's okay. But you could really see a 20 spot from Bijan and a 10 spot from Algier, right? Like, that's the kind of the way I see it, where Algier's been efficient, but Bijan could just have that really big game, and Algier could give you a decent enough game backing him up.
Yeah, 100% agree with that. And I think they're more likely to be taking that run first approach at the end of the day, which is kind of just the bottom line.
Kicker's very much in play today. Our boy Younghoe Koo, Matt.
That guy's a wagon.
He really is. Chase McCloud.
That's Jordan's guy. Every time on Sunday live before lock, like right at the end, me and Eric do our 100 yards and a touchdown or whatever. Eric asked Jordan one time and he said Younghoe Koo.
Did he really?
Yeah, he doesn't know enough NFL players. He's like, oh, Younghoe Koo.
That's awesome. Anything else you want to touch on here? Kickers, defense, anything like that?
I guess if you're throwing a real deep dart, we did see Cameron Johnson play 25 snaps for the Bucs. I didn't even know this guy. I watch a ton of college football, but I can say it's not Division II college football, which is where he comes from. So I have no idea on this guy. He went to Barton College. Like, I'm surprised he's even on the roster, but he must have done something in camp to earn this spot. He did not play well when he was on the field last time out, so there's a chance it's just 100% Sterling Shepard and this guy doesn't get any looks. But that's about as deep as I'm willing to go, I think, on this team.
Same. And if you want to talk Baker Mayfield, it's not the same thing as Kirk Cousins, because Baker Mayfield is, semi-mobile, but you're playing him. I prefer him more in the flex as well. But Baker Mayfield has had a couple really blow up games this year. The issue I'm running into is I just don't see it happening in this spot. I could be wrong, but I still like him better at the flex positions.
I agree. I have him more in the flex, certainly, but I have him more in captain than Cousins, if that makes sense.
So do I. Yeah, so do I. Let's build a lineup and get out of here. Send you guys on your way. Thanks for hanging out and supporting the channel and supporting the show. We appreciate you guys a lot. And as always, once again, you want to use those tools. Even just look around if you're not ready. Link in the description and in chat. And rock the avatar. You want to just get the tools for free. Finish top 3 in a field of 5,000 or more and tweet us your wins. It's Stokastic HOF. As long as you're using one of those beautiful avatars, wherever it is you play, stokastic.com/HOF. Just download it and use it wherever it is you play. You could enter a 10-cent contest. Finish top 3 in a field of 5,000 or more. No matter how much you win is irrelevant. You get a free month, $200 value. Sims NFL Max. Win twice in a calendar year. Get a month and another week of any other sport you want. Win 3 times. Move your way up to gold. We have a lot of people. Jordan and I do this every week. Ton of people in the gold tier as well. 3-time Hall of Famer. $550 Sims Max. Every sport, every tool for the entire month. And of course, the beautiful ring, 20K plus win, gets you one of those puppies. Look at that. What better way to commemorate your big win than to have one of those beauties sitting on your desk or somewhere? Put it on your nightstand. Remind your wife each night what you've accomplished. In all seriousness, they're sick, man. All right, I got to get one. All right, so let's build a lineup and see what we can do here before we close this out. These are tough sometimes to build positive sim ROIs by hand for Showdown. If I'm doing a main slate, Matt, I can go in and build a lineup and almost guarantee you that I'm getting positive simmed ROI on my first try. It's tougher with Showdown.
I think it's harder because you need to factor in like duplicates and stuff.
Yeah,
So like theoretically, you could build a lineup that projects really high, but if it ends up with like 56 dupes, like it's not going to sim well.
that is the problem. Yeah, it could look really sweet, but it doesn't matter. All right, where we go? You want to go Bijan at captain?
I do. He's my favorite.
Me too. Bijan captain, and this is the single lineup simulator for those of you wondering. Let's. I think we throw like a Ray in there or something.
Absolutely. My question was going to be, what value guy do you want to play?
Let's throw Ray in.
I think he's the safest. He's going to be on the field the most. You could probably poke a hole in Sterling. For Tampa Bay, my favorite player is Godwin. Do you have any qualms with that?
Not at all. No.
Okay.
Not, especially, full PPR here. Hard not to like Godwin. You know what? Let's see what the Sims tell us if we go Tyler Algier in a lineup like this.
Tyler Algier.
Let's see let's see what type of instant feedback we get from going Bijan and Algier.
Yeah, I like that. My question is, do you want to make this like a full Atlanta onslaught, or do you want to play with the game script? Atlanta's leading. We got 2 Atlanta RBs. Do we use Baker Mayfield in a trailing game script with Godwin? Because we absolutely can. We have a ton of salary left.
Yeah, okay. We could. I'm just looking for ways to get different after that.
We have 2 RBs on the same team.
You are right. I just know with no kickers and no defense, what's that going to look like?
Well, if we play a kicker or defense, we're basically going up to Mike Evans, I think.
Okay, so can we but that would be without Baker.
We have a ton of salary left.
I know.
Our concession, we made 2 of them already. We have Ray and Algier. We do not need a defense or a kicker. Like, we're in stud territory for our last couple guys.
I know. I'm just, again, though, all right. Round this out, round out the last 2, and then I'm going to build something here before we go that looks a little bit different.
I mean, last 2, I think we're going Mike Evans, Bucky, Irving, something like that.
Okay. Mike Evans, Bucky, Irving, try it.
This is definitely a large field lineup if it sims well.
Yeah. -17.
Maybe the prudent move would be like, if you remove Bucky and Mike Evans, you can do London and like a Mooney or something. Like, I don't know. But paying down twice and having Algier be one of them, I think that's your full leverage point if you do this.
You know what I'm surprised did not sim out well for me?
What?
Because I just ran it, was Bijan captain, Cameron Johnson, Chris Godwin, Baker Mayfield, Mike Evans, and Tyler Algier. So like a full out passing attack onslaught for Tampa with Bijan and Algier, and it was not good. Maybe it's because I need Evans at captain instead of Bijan or something.
That could be. I mean, Algier doesn't project all that well, so I don't think he's going to sim particularly well.
Neither does Cameron Johnson.
You're just playing for a specific game script.
That's the problem, yeah.
Which might not be super likely, but if you're running a lot of lineups, doing stuff like this isn't crazy.
How much is okay, let's see. Can we make this work? If I put Godwin at captain, Godwin, Johnson, Bijan, Algier, Mayfield, and Evans, it's probably still going to be negatively sim because of that Algier projection. And the fact that he's pretty, yeah, it is. And he's not cheap either.
I think that's what it's telling us is we probably don't want to play like Cameron Johnson and Algier, like you're giving up a lot of projection for 2 really low owned guys in a vacuum. 1 by themselves, probably okay.
That's probably the way to do it, because I actually did sim the first one with Algier and Robinson, And then we did Baker and I put Bucky Irving in there, and we don't even have him projected that well. If I boosted him, it would look better. And I got 20% on that, positive 20.
I love that.
Yeah. I bet if you boosted Irving a little bit and brought White down, Irving would look really good given the ownership right now.
100% agree.
Because, wow, we have White getting almost double the ownership on Irving. Anyway, you guys can check that tool out for yourself. We're going to get out of here. Matt has a call.
That's only on Mondays. I don't have a call today.
Right. That's right. Appreciate you guys as always. We love doing this show and having you with us. Hit Matt up at Matt _ Gajewski on Twitter, me at Laffy _D. Hit us up in the Discord. Say hello as well. And we will see you back here, I guess, for Monday's game, right? Don't forget too, Sunday morning, we have a showdown live before lock for that international game between the Jets and Vikings. That's before all of our regularly scheduled content leading up to the main slate. So we'll see you guys back here for the next one. Peace.